Hello. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. EVE is a Greater Lansing nonprofit that stands for End Violence Encounters. Today I'm joined with Executive Director Bridget Gurdon. How are you today, Bridget?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So how are you? First, why don't you tell us a little bit about EVE and what its mission is?
So EVE is a domestic violence and sexual violence organization here in Lansing. And our mission is really to provide healing supportive services for survivors of domestic violence, sexual violence, and elder abuse. We even provide services for stalking as well. And then EVE has a multitude of services, starting with an emergency shelter for domestic violence survivors, as well as counseling services. We provide advocacy services for domestic violence and sexual violence survivors, as well as elder abuse. We do all of the personal protection orders for Ingham County, and we do community education as well.
Okay. So for those who don't know, what is domestic violence defined as?
Domestic violence is really about power and control. It's about either a relationship. It doesn't have to necessarily be a spouse, but any intimate partner that has some type of power and control over another person. So it can look in the forms of physical abuse, which most people are more familiar with, but there's also emotional abuse, which is the put downs, the name calling, the bullying, the making them do something that they feel really uncomfortable doing. All of those. There's also financial abuse, and that is strictly either making them quit their jobs, not allowing them to work, solely depending on the abuser or the perpetrator for financial support, for caring for the children, making sure there's a roof over their head. And so there's several different forms of it, but the main components is that power and control.
Okay. And how prevalent is that issue in the Greater Lansing community?
Sure. So the statistics show that 1 in 4 women, 1 in 7 men, and 1 in 2 LGBTQ community members are affected by domestic violence on an annual basis.
Wow. So what signs should people look for in loved ones who may be going through this type of relationship?
Sure. So the biggest thing for community members is to first believe whoever is coming to them, because it is hard for someone to even come forward and talk about the situation. But the biggest sign is isolation, especially with the pandemic. People are even more isolated. But I think isolation is the biggest clue, is that they haven't talked to their friends or family. They're not allowed to go out. They're not allowed to do text their friends or call their friends. There's just, putting that person in that I want to say corner where they're really dependent on that perpetrator or the abuser for their quality of life.
Okay, and so how would you suggest maybe trying, if someone does see these signs, trying to help that person or get that person help if, like, let's say in the pandemic, they kind of went radio silent and maybe things weren't good before. How should someone go about trying to help their loved one?
I mean, the biggest thing, especially in the pandemic, we're telling people just to reach out to see how they are in a general conversation. But if we know that there's something going on, is making sure that they have a safety plan. So if things are going awry and there's arguments, having a code word is really great. So a code word to either call the police, or a code word that signifies that they're in danger and they need help, a code word for their children. So if there is a situation where children are involved, that children can get out of the house and run to a neighbor, using that code word, making sure that they're having some type of safety plan. They know if they are going to leave, where they're going to go leave to, if they're going to go to a neighbor's house, or they're going to go to a friend's house, or they're going to call a shelter. Any of those things, making sure that if there is an explosive argument, that they're not in an area that doesn't have an exit. They're not in an area that has weapons, those types of things, and really making sure that we have those types of plans in place so that if something does happen, that they have a exit ability.
Okay. So, are there phases or steps of someone that goes through this type of relationship and experiences domestic violence? And if so, what are they?
Not really. Every relationship is different. And so every way that a person may meet someone is different and is unique to them. There's always going to be explosive times and there's always going to be calm times in any relationship, but it's really goes back to that power and control of really watching the partner's controlling abilities or manipulation or their power over another person.
Okay. And if someone is watching this interview right now that's experiencing domestic violence or has, what would you say to them?
It's okay to reach out for help. I know the pandemic has made it a little bit harder to reach out for help, but we're here and we believe you. And please call our crisis line or our chat line. It's encrypted and we're ready to help.
Okay. Do you have anything else like you would like to add or like to tell the community to help them maybe rally around these survivors or those that may be experiencing this?
The biggest thing is that it's really prevalent. It's much more prevalent than most people know. We do a lot of educational presentations where a lot of people end up disclosing that they are a survivor of domestic violence. And so it can be your neighbor, it could be your sister, it could be your brother. It really doesn't discriminate. And so it really just be kind to each other because you don't really know what's going on. And then the other thing I would say is our crisis line number is 517-372-5572, and we're there 24/7. So if someone needs help immediately, please give us a call and we're happy to help.
Okay, thank you so much, Bridget, for joining me today.
Thank you.
And my name's Katie Schroeder, and you're watching Home TV.